Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Homes and Safe Communities on Wednesday, the 5th of March, 2025. It's 6 p.m, so we will start the meeting. Just before I start, I do have some housekeeping to go through with you. May I remind everyone present that the meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Homes and Safe Communities on Could all participants please mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? If a participant wishes to speak, can they use the remote raise hand function? If a participant raises their hand via the remote function and is not subsequently invited to speak by the chair, please could they turn their camera on to indicate or place a message in the chat function. When invited to address by the chair, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is on to ensure that they can be seen and heard when actively participating. If this is not possible for any reason, please bring this to the attention of the Chair and/or Democratic Services Officer as soon as possible. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function for the sake of the recording. The chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and/or to grab the attention of the Chair or Democratic Services Officer. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard when they are addressing the committee, then they should let the Chair or Democratic Officer know. So please could I welcome all committee and non-committee elected members, our officers, and also anyone watching the live meeting broadcast. Moving on to the agenda, we will begin with agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any, Liz?
Yes, please, Chair. We have one apology through to Democratic for our tenant representative, Viv John. Thanks.
Thank you. I've not received any apologies. Do we have any other apologies? Okay, I see no hands up, no one wishing to speak. Agenda item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. Are members happy to approve and can I have a proposer and seconder?
I'll propose.
Councillor Hennessy? Okay. Councillor Lloyd-Selby?
Happy to second.
Thank you. Heather?
I've just turned up. I'm late turning up. Sorry, but I'm here. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Not a problem. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do we have any? I see no hands raised, no one wishing to speak. Okay, so agenda item 4 is the Civil Protection Unit update. Debbie, would you like to go ahead?
Debbie, can I just ask you to select your request to speak button, please, in the centre of your screen at the bottom. It's an icon with somebody speaking.
We can't hear you, Debbie.
If you don't have your audio muted, Debbie, and you don't have any headphones plugged in, etc., it may be that you need to leave and rejoin the meeting for us to be able to hear you possibly. But you may want to also check your audio settings.
Teams.
And make sure that Teams is closed down, if that's okay. Unfortunately, we can't hear you at all. Chair and Debbie, perhaps we may want to move on to the ADP item and come back to Debbie's item when she's been able to leave and rejoin.
I was just about to suggest that. Okay. So we will go to agenda item 5 while we're waiting for Debbie.
Sorry, that's what I meant. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, we will go to agenda item 5 while we're waiting for Debbie. Debbie can follow on after that. So it is the reference from Cabinet, Vale Glamorgan Council Housing Policy on application of the Welsh Housing Quality Standard. Andrew, would you like to come in?
Thank you, Chair. This is a reference from Cabinet with regards to the WHQS application. I'm sure members will be aware that at the start of last year, a new version of WHQS, the Welsh Housing Quality Standard, became legislation and made one or two changes. There are a lot of similarities with the previous standard, for which we also had a compliance policy. But this takes it to another level now and starts to tackle decarbonisation of the council's housing stock, and looks at our interpretation of how we actually intend to deliver that. There are a number of key stages in WHQS, as I'm sure members will be aware. And the first one is actually reaching 2027, where we will have conducted a past 2035 survey to all of our properties, which will enable us then to understand what we need to do to our homes, and then further after that we will then start and work towards improving the housing stock and decarbonising that housing stock the same. There are a couple of stages within that process. The first one is at 2029, where we will have reached SAP 75 or EPC Band C, and then in 2034 is the intended target date, as it stands at this moment in time, to reach SAP 92 and an EPC of Band A. So really the document does set out how we interpret the Welsh Government's latest version of WHQS, and how we will be applying that as a housing service to our housing stock. Now, quite clearly, it's a 10-year journey, and we won't be able to deliver it all in one hit. So there are a number of actions that we will have to mirror then within the housing revenue business plan. So yeah, a lot of the things are similar, and you will recognise from our previous incarnation of the WHQS application, and then there are some new things in there. One of which is low level or low use water facilities. So baths will be low fill, showers will have aerators on them to reduce the amount of water that goes through there. We will have to provide water butts in gardens, and so on and so forth, in an attempt to try and preserve A, natural resources, and then B, to decarbonise our housing stock. At the back of this report, you will see there is a certificate which we will be making out and declaring to all of our tenants at a void period. So change of tenancy, all new tenants will be receiving a certificate that explains to them the gaps that are going to be in their property on our journey towards complying with the latest version of WHQS. I'm happy to take questions. I'm sure the document is quite lengthy and wordy, and if anyone's got any particular issues they want to raise, flag up. But this really is for adoption at this point, and then it will be presented to Welsh Government as our version of how we intend to meet those standards. I can see a couple of hands starting to go up. So happy to take questions as they arise. So, Councillor Hennessy.
Yeah, hi, Andrew. I don't know if you can tell me this, but what's the percentage of council properties left to have their buildings wrapped now?
Oh, crikey. That is a fantastic question, and off the top of my head, I don't have the answer. Of a housing stock of about 4,000, we have probably wrapped about 1,000, but not everyone will be requiring a wrap. Some may be suitable for cavity wall insulation, and others will only be suitable for internal wall insulation. But it's probably fair to say, as it sits at this moment in time, off the top of my head, I think we've done about 25% of our housing stock.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lovelock-Edwards.
Good evening, Chair, and good evening, Andrew.
Good evening.
Firstly, I just want to say that this this document and the report sets out a clear sort of positive sort of premise from the efforts that the council are making in terms of decarbonisation. And it's clear that in many respects, the housing stock that we hold will be much more energy efficient than those in the private sector. And I think we should be, the officers and the council should be applauded for that. And that's no mean feat. And whilst I want to sort of continue on a positive note, I wanted to follow on from Councillor Hennessy's question and ask about a timeline, because and if I appreciate that you don't know that information off the top of your head in what percentage, and I'm sure that you would be able to update us with a timeline of when those remaining properties are likely to be fulfilled in that regard. And I just wanted to ask a specific question in terms of, whilst the efforts of decarbonisation are clearly a high priority for this council, and so they should be, I just want to make sure that we have the comms strategy in place and the consultation process in place to ensure that those residents who, for whatever reason, will be not completely au fait with what decarbonisation will mean for them on a day-to-day basis, what those changes, as you've alluded to, in terms of how they take a bath or how they have a shower or how they heat their home, to some, and in particular more vulnerable adults and older adults, may need specific information relayed to them in simple terms that they can understand. And I just want to check what comm strategy we have in place, what consultation process is going to take place, so that people are getting the right message at the right time and we can take them on that journey so they understand how the changes are going to gradually improve their homes, and also that they don't have to fear that there will be increases in certain costs, including any fuel costs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With regards to the timeline, as you alluded to there, it is extremely difficult to provide a timeline. The past 2035 targets actually provide us with a target pathway, and that target pathway then dictates what we need to do and where we need to do it, and how we need to do it. And until we're armed with that information, it's very difficult to actually plan in. The other aspect of that is about trying to resource such an intensive programme. We anticipate that we're going to be spending in the region of an average of £50,000 per property to actually reach the standards. As you can imagine, that's 4,000 by 50 grand, and that's to a cost of £200 million. That has to be funded through the housing revenue account. And we have to make sure that the headroom, along with all the other priorities that we're trying to reach, such as new build and everything else, as well as maintaining our homes at the same time, continues to be funded. The constraints amongst that are things like rising inflation, interest rates, and a number of external factors that feed into that. So it's very difficult at this moment in time for us to be able to plan with any certainty exactly how long that will take us. But that's obviously where we're trying to aim to. And over the next 2 years, we should get some certainty on that delivery programme and how long it will take. With regards to the second aspect of your questioning, and the bringing the tenant and engaging with tenants along the process, then we do recognise that is absolutely critical to success of any change, and this is massive change for tenants. A lot of our tenants are extremely used to gas central heating systems, where you have a gas boiler, you click it on and when you want heat, and within 20 or so minutes your house is actually up to temperature. A lot of the electrical systems, heat pumps and the like, operate in a very different manner, and require the heating to be on a lot longer, and operate at a slightly lower ambient temperature, and it is a very different way of heating. And we, as a social landlord, along with others in Wales, recognise that the key to success is about bringing tenants along on that journey. One of the things we are doing is actually going through a number of pilot projects, because we feel that the best people to actually promote this are tenants themselves, and if we can get that right, then that makes our effort so much easier. But alongside of that, we have got a team of tenant liaison officers who are going out there in the community and supporting tenants. And it's one thing that we will need to bring housing officers along as well, to make sure that they're trained up so that they know how to use the systems, and can again assist our tenants along that journey. Hopefully that answers your questions.
Councillor Lloyd Selby.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Andrew, for taking us through the report. I wanted to pick up on something that Councillor Lovelock-Edwards referenced, which is the report makes it clear that there are potential cost implications for tenants. So, while I welcome the move towards decarbonisation, there is obviously a concern around increased fuel poverty, both in terms of the cost of heating a home and also water poverty. And as the Tackling Poverty Champion for the Council, I'm really looking for reassurance that we will be proactively advising tenants of the support that's available to them, because what we know from all sorts of research, not least our own, is that many people simply aren't aware that there is help available for them. So a proactive approach alongside the positive changes that are being made to accommodation will be really important. So any information on that, Andrew, would be very welcome.
Okay. I mean, in the first instance, we are very conscious about not wanting to plunge tenants further into fuel poverty. That's something that is very much at the forefront of all of our thoughts. Using electric to heat is a very different way, and as a consequence of which, we have been doing a lot of fabric first rather than going into heating appliance changes. We're holding back a little bit on that whilst technology actually does start and catch up. But members may be aware that on 7 Avenue there's a number of flats down there that we've done work on recently, and we've been trialling a solar panel system that actually shares that electricity amongst flats, and it operates in 2 ways. One is that tenants are able to use and draw down on that solar energy during the working day, and it also has a battery backup as well, so that they have access to that stored energy outside of daylight hours. And the second part is that there are feed-in tariffs as well, which also assist. Now, we've managed to get some data from those solar panels that show exactly how they are performing, and who's getting benefit to it. And on average, we've shown a reduction in tenants' bills over the first 6 months of about £40, and then also a £40 return on energy that's been returned back into the grid. So that's an £80 reduction, essentially for tenants. Now, that does mean them signing up to that scheme for them to actually get that return. But at this moment in time, we're finding that tenants aren't particularly interested in signing up for it. So we know we've got some work to do around encouraging them to complete the applications to get that return on it. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing that we are looking at. We are very conscious that we need to maximise the benefits to tenants, and solar power and being able to get a reduction on their energy bill is absolutely critical at this moment in time. So, we are really conscious about not plunging tenants further into fuel poverty. With regards to the water saving aspect, if tenants are actually on meters, then that should reap benefits to them, and actually not plunge them into any further poverty in relation to water usage.
Chair, can I just come back on that?
Yes, you can, but I think Mike also wants to add something to that. So do you want to go first, or do you want to hear from Mike first?
Just a comment. So it's good to hear about the potential savings that are there. Obviously, it's a concern that not everybody perhaps is understanding the potential benefits of the changes. And while you referenced, approximately a £40 reduction for some people, that may not be the case for everybody as the scheme goes forward. So it's just to come back to my original point, really, about the importance of proactive engagement with tenants to ensure that A, they understand the potential financial benefits of the changes, and if they have to sign up to that they're supported to do that. And B, that for those tenants where there may be additional cost, what steps are we taking to proactively support them with that? And I'm guessing Mike has got his hand up to come back in on that.
Mike's going to probably come in now and talk about the fuel, the fuel poverty, not fuel poverty, but the income management team. So I'll let Mike come in and he can elaborate on that.
Mike.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Loyce-Salvey, you raise a really, really important point. We could be investing substantial amounts of money into the improvements, and our residents not understand how to use the technology. And Andrew's mentioned solar, but they're obviously air source heat pumps are being seen as somewhat of a panacea and moving away from gas to electric. And it's not only the technological challenge that I think you're raising, which is really, really important, but it's the behavioural change as well, because they have to go hand in hand. As I mentioned, there's no point investing in our homes, making them as airtight as they possibly can be, utilising the electricity, so on and so forth. And then we find the tenants revert to how they used to operate in their homes. It's about making that transition as easy as possible for residents to understand. People have different awareness in relation to decarbonisation and the importance of it. So it's part of an education journey, I guess. It's part of a technological journey, and different residents will have different needs. Can I just pick up? So on that point, we have TLOs that will be part of that conversation with the residents before we start the work. So there will be in-depth discussion with residents around how do we get that message across, because for this to be a success, not only for the individual tenants, but as I say, for the decarbonisation journey as a whole. We will, as I say, ensure that residents know how their systems work, the benefits that are potentially there, some of the issues. Ongoing, Andrew's mentioned the solar panels at 7 Avenue, and I just wanted to flag as well what the technology can also tell us in terms of highlighting individuals who may be falling in or may be in fuel poverty. Because what we can also see is not only what the advantages and the benefits are, with the technology at 7 Avenue, we can actually see what the actual electricity usage actually is. So what's going into the system, not including the solar element. And what the report has shown us is that of the, I think it's 20 residents at 7 Avenue, 3 or 4 of those residents are consuming such a low level of electricity that it is flagging to us some concerns around whether that is because they are in actually dire financial, have such dire financial circumstances that they're choosing not to turn their lights on or not to use the heating or not, because they are so below average levels of electricity usage for the rest of the remaining residents there. So that's alerted us and flagged to us that there may be an issue. So for those residents, we will now do some deep dive work to understand what is going on in their homes and why is the situation. And it may well be those residents, for one reason or another, aren't in fuel poverty. They just aren't using the average amount of electricity. But it may be that those residents are so scared about using their electricity and the impact that they are potentially affecting their own health, well-being. We've just gone through the winter, so it's showing us that during the winter their electricity usage was really low, and there has to be a reason behind that. So we will also then, as I say, engage with those residents through, as Andrew has mentioned, through our income team, through our money advice team, to make sure that all of the options that they have in terms of maximising their income, benefits that might be available to them that they may not have claimed, issues around the winter fuel allowance, for example, which we know has been a particular concern as well. So it's not technology advancement for the sake of it. There is a behaviour change aspect, but also, as I say, the technology is also allowing us to as an early warning system, to identify those residents that may need even more support than perhaps we may have given them at the outset.
Thanks, Mike. Reassuring.
Councillor Payne.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, you've covered a lot of points, Mike, that I was going to say, which is about tenancy support. And there is a responsibility here for tenants in terms of maintaining their properties and also reporting when issues arise. And what I find in my day job is that people don't report because they sometimes are very concerned about cost or worried. We have a particular issue with condensation in properties because they're not able, for whatever reason, to manage that issue. So it's important. And my point also is about induction. So for new tenants, again, with this change, there needs to be a very different induction about how they manage their properties, how they manage their tenancies. So we need to perhaps look at some kind of engagement exercise with new tenants, but also those who are finding difficulty in managing their properties already. So I just wanted to make that point, really. It's about partnership, and it's about, sometimes working from where people are at, not where we're at. It's about their level of understanding and their awareness, really. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, you still have your hand up?
Sorry, Chair. Sorry to butt in again. It was a question that was asked earlier around resources and funding and timescales, and I just wanted, just so the committee are absolutely aware, at this time, each of the social landlords, including local authorities and housing associations, are going through that mapping exercise. At that point, that information is being fed back to Welsh Government, because what is clear at the moment is that there will need to be substantial resources made available in order to achieve the standard as Andrew has outlined. For many heads of housing, and in many of the discussions we've been having recently as a heads of housing group, there is real concern that given the twin priorities of building new council houses and the commitment, obviously, in relation to homelessness, together then obviously with the commitment then to achieve WHQS 23, there is a real concern in the sector that there is inadequate resources to actually achieve both at the same time. We, as a Heads of Housing Group, have flagged that concern with Welsh Government. Welsh Government do recognise it. And Andrew will have attended lots of meetings with officials in relation to the new standard. And I think there will be greater clarity in terms of the resource requirement at the end of that phase in 2027, where Welsh Government will have all of our target energy pathways and will have a better handle on the costs of achieving that standard within the time frame, within the 10-year, 12-year time frame that's been mentioned up to 2034. So it's just to be transparent that there will be obviously some difficult financial considerations that we will have to make potentially in 2027 and in those conversations with Welsh Government, because ultimately our housing revenue account has to be viable. We cannot run the business plan in deficit. And as a result, we've mentioned at a previous committee our rent setting policy, and there are obviously we agreed, the council agreed at that stage to increase its rents to invest in the housing stock, but I just flagged the fact that that investment does need to be viable and does need to be paid for through tenants' rents or through additional resources made available by Welsh Government. So it is a journey, and we'll know a bit more in a few years' time.
Thank you, Mike. Councillor Hennessy.
Yeah, sorry to come back, Andrew. You mentioned heat source pumps just a while ago. How many properties are currently have been installed with heat source pumps? As you know, they're quite expensive. If I finish, as you know, they're quite expensive to run if you don't have solar panels on your property and everything. Do we intend to install solar panels and heat source pumps, or are we giving tenants the choice?
I think that's one of the things that we need to be aware of, that there is choice within
Andrew,
the
we can't hear
documentation.
you. I don't know.
Sorry, is that? I don't know. I don't understand why. Is it?
We're hearing
Yes, no?
Andrew, Chair, from our end, just to let you know.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
Maybe it's mine.
Ground source heat pumps.
I don't know what's going on.
We are aware that they can be expensive to run, and the idea of doing the survey, the past 25 survey, is to maximise the energy efficiency of that property. So it doesn't just look and say that a ground source heat pump is the answer. It will look and say we need to upgrade the insulation, we need to put possibly even triple glazing in to actually get to a particular point where those systems are economical to run. So you'll probably be familiar with the EPC and the way the EPC works, and that basically sets out a range of works that says if you put loft insulation in, it will save you X number of pounds over the course of a year. The EPC is a very basic tool. The past 2035 survey is a stage further, which says that you need to do certain works and you need to do it in a certain order, and this is the end result that you will actually achieve by doing that, and it will give running costs. Now, I suppose it's worthwhile mentioning at this point that not all of our houses are going to be able to reach EPC A. There are going to be some technological barriers in the way of actually getting properties to that level, that magic level, and we've again, been in a number of meetings with other social landlords, and they have real concerns about being able to get a large proportion of their stock up to EPCA and SAP 92. We are reliant a little bit on decarbonisation of the grid, so there's a number of things that need to come in. But one of the reasons that we have tackled fabric first is because we are well aware that putting a heat pump in is a very different way of heating a property, and without the appropriate level of heat retention in that dwelling, it's never going to get warm. And there are a lot of tales, rumours, misinformation about the way that heat pumps work, and whether or not they are any good or not. And that's the reason why we are actually taking it quite slowly at this moment in time. You asked how many we've installed. All of our new build has to have a heat pump because gas systems are not permissible in Wales under building regulations anymore. So all of our new build is working on a heat pump. New build has the benefit of being able to be super insulated, so that has a fantastic chance of being an affordable way of heating. In our existing stock, we've probably installed about 150 now heat pumps, which are various locations throughout the Vale. Our first heat pumps went in some 10-15 years ago, and they were ground source heat pumps, and actually have a coil that goes into the earth and pulls the heat out there. And initially we were getting some kickback from those and people saying that they're not working, but they do appear to work, and it is very dependent upon other measures within that household. So in relation to solar panels have come on in leaps and bounds now. At one stage they had to be in a particular orientation, and not all the houses were going to be suitable for that orientation. They are increasing in their efficiency, and what we're trying to do is stage it so that we are able to get the best technology at the best rate, and the best deal then for our tenants in trying to manage those energy costs that go into their property. So it's the simple answer is it effectively is a holistic solution to that property, and it's not just stick a heat pump in and that's it. We've met our climate target. It is really about looking at the house as a whole and how we actually improve that to the appropriate level, not just to maximise the carbon reduction for that property, but also to maximise the impact that it actually has with that tenant inside it.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, apologies about that. I don't know what happened, but I can hear you now. Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions? No. Okay. We haven't had any. Thank you, Andrew. You may stay or you may go. It's up to you. We haven't had any recommendations as such, have we, Liz?
No recommendations moved, Chair.
Okay, so are we happy to note the report? Councillor Hennessy?
Yeah, happy to note.
Okay, and I'll second that. Thank you. Liz, do we have Debbie back yet?
We do, Chair. Debbie, would you like to test your connection for us, please? We're not hearing you, unfortunately, Debbie. Chair, I think we may, with your permission, need to move on to the next item, because I don't think we're going to be able to get audio at the moment from Debbie.
Yes, I do agree with that. Okay, so We will move on to item number 6, which is the annual delivery plan monitoring report, Q3 performance. Mike, are you taking this?
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully you can hear me.
I can, yes.
Good. The annual delivery plan Q3 report before you takes us up to December 2024, and our aligned actions to our corporate performance framework and our measures. The report before you is slightly different this time round in that colleagues have been using proof of concept for the use of Power BI, which effectively means the report, the electronic report that you have in front of you, those slides which show pie charts. If you click on the various segments of the pie chart, that will deep dive into the information that has created that pie chart. It's just a means, I think, for members to be able to have that information at hand. The format is being reviewed with elected members, officers and colleagues with regard to whether further refinement is required. And I would urge all members to have a play with the system to see whether that meets their needs and whether there are any views that can help us improve how we present this information to you. In terms of the report itself, attached to the report at Appendix A is a summary of the overall progress against those annual delivery plan commitments for 24-25 as they are aligned to the four corporate plan wellbeing objectives. There is also an Appendix B, and if members wish to do so, every single action related to the corporate plan is highlighted there. It is a very, very lengthy document, and hopefully the way that we're using Power BI will enable members to focus in on particular areas that they are interested in. We're also working on further reports which are aligned specifically to the committee's objectives, and you will see within the body of the report, and I'll talk you through Appendix A, that there will be activities, actions, measures that aren't specifically housing measures, but may be aligned to some of the reports that will have been presented to you by Tom Bowring, for example, in relation to food poverty or the warm hubs work that he mentioned at the last meeting, together with other reports from colleagues in social services or actions from colleagues in social services, and obviously SRS as well. If I can take you, Liz, if you would be prepared to share the slides from the PDF.
Yes, they're being shared, Mike.
There we go. I thought it would be easier for me to talk you through the slides rather than me ramble on in the background. As you can see in front of you, the first slide is giving you a snapshot of the overall performance status of the annual delivery plan. And we've indicated on this slide that it is our view that the ADP actions are currently green. And the reason that we've come to that decision, as you can see from the four pie charts below that, we are indicating that either the vast majority of the targets are on target, or for those that have slipped slightly, there are improvement plans in place to ensure that we do outturn at Q4 those actions and measures being completed. But we also highlight there are a small number of red activities across the council, and you'll see later on in one of the later slides those red activities which are aligned to Homes and Safe. If you can move on, please. On the next slide are the actual measures. So these are the performance measures, so the statistics that we use, how much of, percentages of, so on and so forth. And as you can see, there's a somewhat of a mixed bag in terms of some of the measures and achieving targets for those measures. And as I just briefly mentioned, we'll come to one of the later slides that will give you a very much more clear explanation in relation to those targets. Next slide, please. So members will have seen the type of report, this type of report previously in our previous reports in Q1 and Q2, where we highlight some specific activities within the 4 wellbeing objectives, and I draw your attention to 1 or 2 of them as we go along. Hopefully members can, if they haven't got the report in front of them open separately, will be able to see from the screen in front of them a number of those achievements. Just to draw your attention, obviously, to the first bullet point Andrew has reported to you today with regard to our compliance policy. But again, it's just to emphasise that those standards, that compliance policy, a lot of work goes on in the background with our tenant colleagues, many of which are on this committee today, but also with our tenant panel and our working groups and subgroups that look at standards and policies that the housing department operate by. And a lot of the standards are prescriptive in some areas and they are open to interpretation in others, and therefore we do a lot of work with our tenants around the interpretation aspect so that we understand their wishes and desires and needs for their homes where that flexibility exists. Under Objective 2, we flag, and we will have reported previously about some of the community investment activity that we carry out within the service. And there's a mention there of the employability support project that we run through our community development investment team. And anecdotally, an example there of how we've been able to support one of our tenants into employment that previously wasn't employed. And they've now completed an access course to work in our health and social care sector. And as members will be aware, how difficult it is to attract, retain and recruit staff in that sector over the last couple of years. If you'd like to move on, Liz. Under Objective 3, a couple of things I'd point out. So Objective 3, just to remind members, support people at home and in their community. The first one I draw your attention to is the Cardiff and Vale Housing Partnership. We have now entered into partnership with Cardiff, and we now are able to advise that we are in partnership with the building company Lovell. And the partnership will be delivering for the Vale approximately 800 additional homes over the next 10 years. Now, those are in programme, they will be in plan, but there will also be windfall sites that come forward, package deals and others that will supplement those 800 units. The partnership is at very early stages. There's a meeting on Friday to discuss partnership board arrangements and a lot of the sort of detailed sort of secretariat discussions on how the partnership will operate. But as I say, in terms of pace and scale, our ambition as a council for building at pace and scale, the partnership will be the vehicle that we will be using going forward. On the same objective, a little lower down, but on the same area development, I think it is flagging, worth also flagging again. I know we presented the rapid rehousing plan at the last committee, but in this quarter we've completed obviously our new development at Hazewood Road as part of our house building programme. The majority of our existing schemes are on track, so we've got projects at the moment. The Colcott former Colcott Health Centre is now complete, and residents are starting to move in. For those members who keep an eye on Olive Lodge next to Bryn Hill Golf Club, you'll see tremendous advancement in terms of the redevelopment work on that building, and we're still on track there for occupancy sometime around May 25. So, as I say, just to flag a couple of those things. Liz, could you move on, please? So these slides actually then drill down into the committee specific information, and as you can see, in terms of our Q3 actions, all of our actions are either on track, although there is a percentage, as you can see from the pie chart, where some of those may have slipped, but we have actions in place to bring them back on track by the end of Q4. And as I mentioned earlier, then associated with that are our measures overview, which is highlighting 4 exceptions in terms of missing targets. And I think, Liz, if you move on, the next slide will highlight those 4 exceptions. Unfortunately, the first 3 are some of our SRS measures. I won't be able today, if there are questions on those 3, to give you very detailed responses to any questions. Helen Picton obviously would have been available if we were aware in advance if there were likely to be specific questions raised on those matters. Sorry, the last 3, not the first 3, the last 3 of those. But you can see where those exceptions are and the commentary that's been provided by colleagues in SRS. In relation to the first activity, which does fall under housing, around accessible and adapted homes, we do commit in our schemes to provide purpose-built, accessible and adapted homes. They will be delivered in the year. It's just that those developments that we've had at the moment haven't had a requirement or a need to have bespoke adaptations undertaken. It is, and I will have mentioned this previously, however, under WDQR, which is the Welsh Design Standards for Social Housing, all homes have to be easily adaptable in the event that future residents require those adaptations. So even though they may not be bespoke in nature at this stage, the buildings have been designed in such a way in terms of wider doorways, etc., that things like if hoists, ceiling hoists are required, that the structure of the ceilings is such that they will take a hoist. So it's, as I say, just to clarify that point. Next slide, please. So the report also highlights areas for improvement, again aligned to this committee. There are a number of areas there that we may well have discussed this evening. In terms of objective 1, members will be aware that the council is currently looking at the option to redesign its services and to potentially create a corporate landlord function. What that effectively means is, at the moment, the management of the council's assets in terms of its offices, schools, etc., activities are being provided cross-council. The corporate landlord function is around bringing those services together. So, for example, utilities may be carried out by the one division in the council, and that should in itself derive efficiencies and improvements potentially to service. As part of that piece of work, one of our actions within environment and housing was to align our business support functions across the directorate. That work is on hold at the moment because it's going to be predicated very much on a decision as to whether the corporate landlord function evolves into as I've just described, and that will have an impact really in terms of how the building support function is then delivered thereafter. So that currently is an area we've highlighted as an improvement, or an area that is one of the amber issues potentially that I mentioned earlier. In terms of Objective 2, you'll see that there are no actions outstanding or not on track at the moment. In terms of Objective 3, I mentioned at the last meeting that our community investment strategy is slightly delayed due to some staffing issues that we have within service, but hopefully we will be resolving those in the coming weeks, and we'll get that back on track for committee by the end of the year. In terms of Objective 4, it would be remiss of me not to mention Channel View. I know the committee have raised questions on Channel View. I think I mentioned at a previous meeting that due to cost increases in relation to the scheme that we've been working on, has raised questions around its viability, as a result of which we've been working with the ward members. We've had meetings with the Community Council, we've had meetings with Dŵr Cymru. We've commissioned, and I'm awaiting the report in relation to the current cesspit structure and its operation. There will be meetings in the next few weeks to consider all of that information, and we will be bringing a report in due course following discussions with the residents themselves. We'll be bringing a report before Cabinet in the near future with regard to how we try and resolve that issue as best we can. If you could move on, please, Liz. Emerging areas of development and activity. So these are things horizon. These are the horizon issues that we've identified as part of the ongoing year. I won't dwell on that. And if we can move on to the next slide, please, Liz. Emerging areas of concern, which probably cover off a couple of the issues that I mentioned in an earlier response in relation to WHQS 23 around resources. Members will again be aware that much of the work that we do at community safety level is funded via a grant. A number of those grants are annual grants, and an area of concern for us is obviously as resources across the public sector are finite, a concern that some of those grants that provide some of the core services for the community safety team do not always allow us to adequately forward plan. So we're always reliant on confirmation of an annual funding stream, which then makes it very difficult to plan for the medium or longer term. Moving on to objective 3, again, they are predominantly funding issues, but again, from a housing perspective, I flag the shortage of temporary housing. I'm pleased to be able to say that we've got very few residents still in the Holiday Inn Express. The team have been actively, as Nick had mentioned at the report last time round, are actively engaging in identifying alternative accommodation for those residents. I'm pleased to say we no longer have any families in our bed and breakfast, and I think that's the last 4 or 5 months. I think that's been the position which is welcome. One of our areas of concern going forward, Welsh Government have consulted previously on changes to homelessness legislation in Wales. The white paper was out a few months ago and was consulted upon. The white paper shows a direction of travel which may create additional homelessness pressures on the council. So some of the areas, for example, where that might happen, one of the areas in the white paper talks about removing something called priority need. So at the moment, the current legislation dictates who should have more of a priority than others. There is an indication that priority need may be removed. Intentionality, so we have some rare cases where we identify residents have made themselves potentially intentionally homeless, and the current legislation allows us to respond to that. There's an intention in the white paper that intentionality may be removed. And there are also some other areas within the white paper which are positive insofar as ensuring families and individuals are near to where they are being provided then with either temporary or permanent accommodation, should be near their support networks, whether that be school, whether that be caregivers, whether that be health provision. That's very difficult at the moment because, as we are aware, we're in the middle of a housing shortage, a housing crisis, and it's very difficult to be able to satisfy all of our residents' needs in terms of their aspiration, in terms of where they may wish to be rehoused. And that will bring potential pressures on the system, which will be very, very difficult to deliver with the shortage of accommodation and the availability of accommodation that we have. So that is an emerging area of concern. The legislation is likely to be introduced in this Senedd term, we believe, and obviously will go through its internal committee cycle within Welsh Government over the coming months. But as I say, it may be an issue for us in terms of additional pressures that, which are very difficult at the moment to address, may bring additional pressures on the system. I think that's the last of the slides, Liz.
That's right, Mike, yes.
So therefore, as I say, the report before you, there's an Appendix B. I'm not going to go through that. You'll be glad to know. There's about 300 actions or so in that report, I think. So happy to take any questions or observations in relation to the report.
Thank you, Mike. Does anybody have any questions or comments? I see no hands up. Okay, so we have 2 recommendations on that. And the recommendations are that we consider the Q3 results and progress towards achieving the ADP 2024 to 25, commitments as aligned to corporate plan wellbeing objectives within the remit of the committee, and that members consider the remedial actions to be taken to address areas of underperformance and to tackle the key challenges identified within the remit of the committee, with views and recommendations referred to Cabinet for their consideration and approval. As we have not had any comments or questions, are members happy to note the report?
Happy to note, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd-Selby.
Happy to second, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mike, as always, a pleasure. You may stick around or leave, up to you. Thank you. We're going to go back to Debbie now, see if we can get the civil protection update.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Right. Third time lucky. So I do apologise for such a sort of bad technology from my part. It must be that I wouldn't join. So thank you very much for inviting me to the committee tonight to give you an update from the Civil Protection Unit. So I have got a presentation which I think is going to be loaded on for me. Thank you very much. So my name is Debbie Spargo and I'm the Principal Civil Protection Officer for the Council. And if we go to the next slide, it just gives you an outline of where we are based. So we're part of the Environment and Housing Services Directorate, based at the Alps in Wenvo, and Miles Punter is the director. So I report directly to Miles. And the next slide gives the civil contingencies. Sorry, did you want to put the next here? So the Civil Contingencies Act 2004 is a statutory duty on the council and makes us a category 1 responder. And we are responsible for a number of duties under that act, which are laid out before you there. So it's just to give you some information about what, why we're here as a civil protection unit, and these are some of the things that we do to make sure that we're prepared for emergencies when they happen. The next slide, then. Thank you. We'll give the an update on what we've been doing. So the Protective Security Group, or PSPG, has come about after the Manchester Arena. Excuse me, my computer's gone a bit funny there. After the Manchester Arena attack in 2017, and it's taken a while actually to get through to where it is now. It was actually mentioned in the King's speech on the 17th of July, and it is now been introduced to Parliament and is going through parliamentary scrutiny. So we are expecting it to be put into law and to come out to local authorities. Duty on us to make sure that some of these things happen. The duty around this is named after Martin Hyatt, who was a victim of the Manchester Arena attack. And it's about making premises safe. So for us, it's looking at our open spaces. It's quite a big piece of work across the local authority. So we set a PSPG group up. It's been chaired by the director, Miles Punter. And we are looking at the moment at scoping out the work that needs to be done to make sure that we're compliant. There's a number of things that we do as a council. Op Elstree is one of them, which you might have heard of, which is where we look after the open spaces during the summer, community safety led with South Wales Police, multi-agency based, that will report into this group now. So we're basically bringing it all together. I can send you a fact sheet round with the minutes if that would be useful for you on this. And I can also ask if you are interested, Counter-Terrorism Police Wales would be more than happy to come and do a presentation to you on where we're going with this and why we need it. So the next thing that links into that, then it's just the next thing on the slide, is the building security group. So this has been in, excuse me, this has been in being for some time, and it's just been looking specifically at our buildings. It will now report into the PSPG group as part of the governance structure. And that group has been quite active. We've been looking at access and egress policies. We've been looking at how we manage our ID badges, and lots of other issues that we've had around security of the council, to make sure that our staff and our buildings and our public that come into our buildings are safe. The next thing that we're doing, I think it's missed one out. So the Barry Chemical Complex external plan, which comes under the control of major accident hazard COMA regulations, is a statutory duty on the local authority to write this plan. It's an external off-site plan from the chemical complex down off Cardiff Road. And it's up for its 3-year review this year, and we are in the process of reviewing it with our multi-agency partners, and then we will be having an awareness session, and we'll be validating the plan towards the end of the year, which is quite a big undertaking, to make sure that that plan works and everybody knows what they're supposed to do. South Wales Local Resilience Forum then is the multi-agency forum that sits across the South Wales Police area, that's hosted by the Vale Glamorgan Council, and is part of my team, the coordinator that is part of my team, that looks after multi-agency awareness, multi-agency preparations and planning for Category 1 responders across South Wales. The next thing on the slide is the All Wales Civil Contingencies Conference 2025. So this is up and coming this year now, later on in the year. I think this year it's going to be in North Wales. Last year it was held in the Vale Hotel, and my team were heavily involved in running it, and it was very successful. So that's ongoing at the moment. And then the final thing for the update is that there will be a card exercise at Cardiff Airport, and we are part of that. On the part of this, we represent the council on the Standing Safety Committee at the airport. So the next slide then, it just continues with our work really. We have an emergency plan review framework, and on that there is a list of documents and plans that have been reviewed. I'm not going to read them all out because I'm sure you can all read them. And then right at the bottom of that, the EP plans that are under review. So again, the ESAG, which is the Event Safety Advisory Group, will now, because of the Martin's Law, feed in the governance structure for that will come in around the PSPG. So that will feed into that to make sure that we are ensuring that events in the Vale also look at protective security as well. And that's one of these things that are coming out of Martin's Law. And then just a list then of I've already mentioned the Barry Chemical Complex plan, but also the other things that we're looking at doing there. We're looking at under review at the moment. There's a list there of them. I think the final slide then is just on some of the incidents. So we are 24/7, 365 days. We have a duty officer available on call, and we have dealt with a number of incidents in office hours, out of office hours and weekends, and there's a list of them there. Probably significant that you may remember Storm Bert and Storm Dara, and luckily for us in the Vale, we had a really good response. Storm Bert was all around us, so tended to, hit Rhondda and Taff and other local authority areas much worse than us. And Storm Dara, we had a really good response because it was the red warning that was put out. So we had a SLT met as the gold team, And then we met as a tactical silver team underneath that, and we ran all over the weekend to make sure that we could provide services in emergency response to the communities in the Vale. Ongoing then at the bottom, the COVID-19 inquiry, you will be aware that some of that's been recently published. There are modules moving forward on that, which we're inputting to at the moment. The PSPG I've already mentioned. That feeds into the Cardiff and Vale Contest Board, which feeds into Contest Cymru, and then the Event Safety Group, which again ongoing, and we are looking at reviewing the documentation and for events in the Vale. That's very whistle-stop tour through that. If there's any questions or anybody wants to know anything else, I'm more than happy. If I can answer them, I will.
Thank you, Debbie. Always very interesting to hear from you. You're involved in so many different things.
No, we are. Yes, it's a job that I love, and you know, it's a big variety of things that we deal with.
Good. Does anybody have any comments or questions? Councillor Payne?
Hiya, thank you, Debbie. I'm interested in, you said about the chemical plan for Dow Corn, and obviously I'm a Caddick Ward member, so I'd be a little bit more interested in finding out a little bit more about that, please.
Yeah, so it's I know we all call it Dow Corning, don't we? Because that's what it was previously, but and I've been told off by them because it's actually called Dow Silicon now. They changed. They've got quite a different company. So the plan that's around the chemical site is a domino, because it's a domino site. Because at one point there was 6 chemical sites on that site. We have one plan that covers all of them, all of the site, and each of the companies input into that plan. It's a statutory duty for the local authority to write the off-site plan and to make sure that that plan works effectively. So we work closely with all of the chemical companies that are down there. You will probably know then the incident in June last year, where there was they sounded the alarms. We have had debriefs out of that, and there's been we've done some significant work with them on communications, and I'm working with them with our comms teams now to be able to get sort of clearer messages out and to make sure the community fully understand. But yeah, that plan, it's got to be rewritten, tested, and validated every 3 years under the legislation. The Health and Safety Executive and the NRW are the competent authorities, so they oversee that work and they sign that off as being that it's adequate and it's validated as they'd want to. So I don't know if there's anything else specifically, Councillor, you'd want to know.
No, that's brilliant, Debbie. And obviously, I was aware of the incident in June, and I did attend the debrief as well, and I do attend the meetings anyway. But it's interesting to know, what the strategy is for it. So thanks, that's really interesting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I see no other hands up. So as we've had no recommendations as such, can I ask committee if they are happy to note the presentation? Councillor Payne?
Happy to second, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Payne, you were happy to note, yes? You were moving?
Yeah,
okay.
That was the intention of the hand. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah. Okay, so that is the the end of the meeting, I believe. I have no other items that are urgent, part 1 or part 2. So thank you very much, Debbie. Thank you, everybody who has contributed tonight. I will let you go and enjoy the rest of your evening. But before you go, I want to remind you that the next meeting is the 2nd of April at 6 p.m. Thank you. Bye.